Given the simplex matrix below that is complete, identify the maximum value of P and the set of variables that gives the maximum value. So this matrix is they already went through all of the steps of the simplex method, where you notice that in this last column, there's no more negative numbers. So this is just the solution, and this is just reading the solution. So we first have to figure out what the active variables are. And to do that, we check the columns. So let's look at column number 1. If there's only one number that is non-zero, then this is an active variable. So I have only one number, this 1 is non-zero, and I have all other zeros in this column, so this is an active variable. And they probably should have labeled this for you, but I'm assuming that this matrix is a lot like the others that we've been working on, the previous problem in this homework. It's probably the column for x1, I'm guessing. That's what we've kind of, the first variable, this is our column for our second variable. This is the slack variable 1, this is slack variable 2, and this is our profit, okay? So it's telling me right now that x1 is an active variable. The active variables are the only variables we pay attention to in the end. So let's look at x2. Let's look at the column. I'm going to highlight the column so we're focused on the column. Is there only one number that's non-zero? No. We have all the numbers are non-zero. So this is we call it inactive variable. So I'm just basically going to ignore everything in this column because it's where we just set this variable equal to 0. So like, it's just not like it's not there. Then if we look at the next column, S1, is there only one number that's non-zero? Yes. See how we have one, and it could have been a 5. This could have been 5, and then like everything else be zeros. Because there's only one number, and it happens to be a 1, that is non-zero, and the rest of the numbers are 0. So we know that S1 is an active variable. We will pay attention to that column. Now, we look at the next column. Is there only one number that's non-zero? No, they're all non-zero. So, or another way of saying that is, is there only one number and the rest of the numbers being 0? No. So we're going to ignore this whole column. We actually just set that one equal to 0. So I'll say that above. X2 from now on is going to be 0. S2 is going to be 0. Now I look at the next column. The P's, the P column. Is there only one number that's non-zero? Or another words of saying that, do I have a number and all the rest of the numbers in this column are 0? Yes, that is the case. So this is an active variable. So we're going to list that under our active variables. Okay, so I'm basically I'm going to ignore all the other variables, or I actually set them equal to 0, which means I just ignore them. And now I translate this back into equations. So it says this is a coefficient, and that's above is a variable. So it says this first row is saying 1s1 is equal to 3/4. Then it's saying 1x1 is equal to 35/4. And luckily 1x1 is just x1, right? So I can take those 1s out of the front. So this means S1, S sub 1, and X sub 1, those are the answers. And then the last one, and I'm ignoring all the other zeros because it's just going to be 0 times that number, so I just ignore everything else. And I just look for the 1, and I can say 1p is equal to 665/4. And so now those are what is x1? It's 35 over 4. They don't even ask me for s1. We don't care. It's not really an variable of interest. And then x2, we said we're going to set that equal to 0 because it was an inactive variable. And then 665 over 4 is our profit. There you go. I hope you found this valuable. Have a great day.